Prime Minister Modi's visit to Australia. So this visit is basically about projecting one thing: India's soft power. Because if we see the Prime Minister's statements, etc., in this visit, it is mostly focused on the soft power dimension of it. But before that, we should try to etch some commonalities else also. That both India and China are talking about Indo-Pacific. This has to be not just free and open, but inclusive also. Okay, why we are talking about it? Because of the Chinese involvement and its growing footprints, which we fear that rather any conflict or because of the Chinese behavior might deny freedom of navigation and overflight from the seas of Indo-Pacific because of the Chinese behaviors and the actions. Okay, China has also been thought to be launching air identification zone. Okay, so when we talk about this identification zone, it's about basically forcing countries to report to China if they are flying through that route. So it's like asserting their sovereignty over the areas which might not be belonging to them. If they do not report to China, then Chinese plane will fly and they will harass even the civilian aircrafts. So this is called Air Defense Identification Zone, ADIZ. Okay. So China, there have been several news that they have been in process of recommending or in process of launching this kind of air defense identification zone even over the entire South China Sea. So it can impede the freedom of overflight. All right. So this is the common concern for both Australia and India. Apart from it, Chinese behavior in Ladakh, that means India is practically facing Chinese heat directly, right? Same is the case with Australia also. So Australia is also facing economic sanctions by the Chinese imposed upon Australian export to the China because Australia demanded probe in COVID, that there has to be an independent and transparent probe into the COVID event as to who's the nation which is responsible for this and what is the origin of this COVID pandemic. Okay, this was not liked by China, so they have resorted to economic means. So Australians also have realized that for economic purpose, too much dependence on China might be threatening for their economic prosperity. Why? Because China can anytime say that I will not entertain your imports into our territory. I will block your exports, right? So exports going from Australia to China will be blocked anytime, and therefore Australian wants to explore more markets, and India is a important destination in this regard for Australia. So therefore they have concluded an economic agreement also recently passed in this regard, right? So for both India and Australia, China is an important country which has brought these two countries together like never before in the recent past. Because if we see that high level visit by Indian Prime Minister to Australia has not been very frequent in the past as this is happening recently, right? So now let's talk about this particular visit. Soft power is something that operates as a result of influence, as a result of attraction. And it is because of the reason that countries' values, cultures, right, trade, tourism, right, all these things are important component of projecting the soft power. Education. Now when we talk about power in general, it is making other people do against their will or something that they will not otherwise do. This is the normal common understanding of power. It has two dimensions. One is hard, one other is soft. The hard dimension relies on the military power, the economic coercion, etc., which China is using. So China has applied economic coercion in the form of sanctions on Australians. Okay. So this is an exercise of hard power. India wants to project alternative to China. And so we are talking about soft power, right? We are not talking about this, we are projecting ourselves as an opposite to China, that we will never use these kind of instruments of economic coercion come what the situation may. Maybe there may be a situation when India's relationship with the Australians might not be conducive and good, right? Even in those extreme situations, we will not use extreme steps because we have a different value system, we have a different culture, and our people to people exchange are also too deep that we cannot imagine such kind of steps. Why? Why we cannot imagine? Let's see. We have democracy. Both countries are democratic. Even Prime Minister Modi has projected India as the mother of democracy, right? So having democratic roots so deeper in our society, we can never do something that will impact Australian interest in this manner as the China can do. Okay. Second thing, diaspora. Around 700,000 strong Indian people are living there, right? So we have stakes in Australia's prosperity and peace because it will directly impact us economically. If anything wrong happens to the Australians, so it will impact the Indian diaspora, which will not, which will we will never want, right? So we have stakes in the prosperity of Australia, and we want Australia to flourish. Okay. So cricket and curry is all obviously about cuisine, culture, etc. As I said, it is also about important component of self, important component of soft power. Now, soft power, that means molding somebody's will and action by virtue of force of attraction, right? It's not coercion, right? As implied in the hard power, as in the Chinese case. We're talking about that we want to influence their behavior by way of attraction, by way of good things that we have to offer, right? Now, we are also talking about energy, economic and education. Now, large number of Indians are studying in Australian universities. So this is also proving a good economic benefit for the University of the Australia. Okay. So education is important component that Prime Minister is pushing. Energy, we may cooperate on how to build futuristic solar power panels and solar power, develop technologies in terms of solar power energy so that it becomes cheaper, to make it more cheaper, so we can do R&D in this regard. We can cooperate on research and development here. We can also talk about hydrogen. This is also a future fuel, so green hydrogen. There is a huge scope of collaboration. Apart from this, we have also signed a nuclear deal with Australia, so nuclear cooperation, because this is also going to be directly related to energy relationship and energy security. Australia is already the important supplier of coking coal to us, coking coal, right? So it's an important coal which we despite having one of the largest reserves of coal in India, we don't have this high quality coal, which is absolutely required to produce high quality steel as well, right? So also we import large amount of coal from Australia, right? So it's again adding to our energy security, right? So energy is obviously an important dimension of Prime Minister's visit. All right. Now there is something called Little India in Sydney, right? So you can use this as an example, though there is nothing significant in this. But when Indian diaspora is an important topic of our syllabus in GS2, right? So these small things, small fact we can mention as an example in the answers to substantiate our point, right? That in Australia, the significance of Indian diaspora, if we want to mention that, we can talk about that Little India named suburb is there in Sydney. So it is also called Little India Gateway, all right. PM highlighted India's position in the world as a force for global good, right? I had already talked about, we are projecting ourselves as an alternative to the Chinese, and we are saying that we are not like the Chinese, right? We are for the global good. PM lauded India's banking system. Today, IMF considers India as a bright spot in global economy. The World Bank believes that if anyone is challenging global headwinds, it is India. Banking system in several countries are in trouble today, but on the other hand, the strength of India's banks are being appreciated and everywhere. So it is also in a way to attract or enable the Indian banks to invest in Australian also, right? And also attract foreign direct investment from Australia into this sector, right? So these are some of the important points that we can keep in mind while we are appreciating this article.